Tonight's topic is about Ayn Tova, a good eye, a positive eye. It is somewhat related to Midat HaChesed, the Midah of kindness. Even though we've already spoken about Midat HaNedivut, which is generosity, as you will see, Ayn Tova is a lot more encompassing. It covers many more areas. It includes looking at life, looking at things in a positive way, b'tzura chiyuvit. I want to begin by quoting the Mishnah that mentions this characteristic. In Pirkei Avot, kol mi sheyesh bo shlosha dvarim halalu, whoever has the following three characteristics, hu mitalmidav shel Avraham Avinu, he belongs to the school of Avraham Avinu. Ushlosha dvarim acherim hu mitalmidav shel Bil'am harasha, and whoever has the opposite three characteristics belongs to the school or to the students of Bil'am harasha, Bil'am the wicked. What are the three characteristics that belong to the school of Avraham Avinu? Ayn Tova, a good eye; Ruach Nemucha, a humble spirit; Nefesh Shafala. A Nefesh Shafala is one who is content with whatever he has. Also a bit of humbleness involved, but much more concerning the desires. Nefesh Shafala means the one who does not desire a lot. He's content and happy with his lot. These are the three characteristics that belong to Avraham Avinu. The other ones, the opposite three, Ayn Ra'ah, a negative eye, an evil eye; Ruach Gevoah, an arrogant spirit; and a Nefesh Rehava, a very expansive spirit, one who covets a lot, desires everything for itself. That is Talmidav shel Bil'am harasha, that belongs to a totally opposite school of thought, the one that belongs to Bil'am. Talmidav shel Avraham Avinu ochlim ba'olam hazeh v'nochalim le'olam haba. That's an additional important point that the Mishnah makes, is that don't think that those who follow the school of thought of Avraham Avinu will be left out in this world, will not be able to enjoy this world. On the contrary, their life will be much more fulfilling. They will have a happier life. In olam hazeh, this world will be much more enjoyable for them, and as a result of their conduct, they will also inherit olam haba. This particular midah that we call Ayn Tova, a good eye, a positive eye, is the exact opposite of jealousy, opposite of tzarut ayn, one who's a miser and does not like to share his wealth. It's also the opposite of an individual who's very obnoxious. He's always complaining, always grumpy, never happy, as we call it in Hebrew, nirgan or nirganut. Never content, even though we're trying to help him, he always has something negative to say. So a person who possesses an Ayn Tova, a good eye, is the exact opposite of that. He looks at things differently. He handles situations in a much different way. And obviously, he's happy for others. He's not jealous of them. Completely opposite individual of some of the midot that we've already mentioned in the past. I want to give you a quick definition of what Ayn Ra'ah is, which is the opposite of Ayn Tova. Ayn Ra'ah in English is called begrudging. Begrudging is a little bit different than the word envy or being jealous of. Even though they're pretty much synonymous, and to begrudge means to envy the possession or enjoyment of somebody, that somebody has something that you very much would like to have for yourself, or to wish ill, and that's the one I'd like to emphasize. Someone who is not happy that somebody else just bought himself a new car, a new house, and so forth. He wishes them ill. He resents it. Or the word begrudge is also used when you give something unwillingly. You're not happy about it, but you have to spend the money. You have no choice. You're giving it in a begrudging way. All of this is pretty much a definition of an Ayn Ra'ah, of a negative eye, looking at things negatively, not being happy with his situation. Regular or pure envy or jealousy is when somebody wants to have what the other individual has. He has it, I'd like to have it for myself too. To begrudge or not to be happy for someone is a lot worse. It's because even though you have it, you already have what he has, you're not happy that he has what he has. You actually would want him not to have what he just got, even though you have it. That's a worse midah. That is a terrible midah. People who begrudge, who are not happy for others. Whereas an ayin tovah sees things completely different. He's happy for people. He actually can share in their simcha, not being envious, and actually wishes them the best in a sincere way, from the bottom of his heart. He really means what he says. He has an ayin tovah, he has a positive eye, a good eye towards people and towards the situations around him. In order to develop this midah, obviously, in order for this midah to be strong in one, it requires a background of all sorts of other fundamental midot. It is impossible for one to have a good eye unless the background, unless the midot in him in general are good. There need to be other good midot abounding in this individual for there to be also ayin tovah. For example, with Avraham Avinu that we mentioned before, that he has an ayin tovah, a ruach nemucha, and a nefesh shefala, these are the midot the commentaries explain, shematzmichot et midat chesed. These three characteristics that Avraham Avinu had enabled him to become a kind person, a bal chesed. He had guests over all the time. He actually wanted this. He enjoyed it. In order to be on that level, on that madriga of actually wanting this, pursuing this, you're not doing this because you have to do it. Remember, a true bal chesed is a rodef chesed. He wants to pursue it. He's always looking for opportunities to do chesed. For an individual to truly be a kind person, it's not enough that he does acts of kindness. He actually wants it. He looks for every opportunity to help. So in order to bring this about, in order to reach this level, there has to be other midot that act in the background, shematzmichot, that bring about this midah of chesed. In the same way, to bring about ayin tovah, the other midot that need to be there would be, some of them at least, would be simcha. Person needs to be an individual who is happy, not depressed, not sad on a regular basis, one who is content with what he has and therefore he's not jealous, he's kind-hearted, he has bitachon b'Hashem. In other words, he has trust in Hashem that whatever is meant to happen is going to happen, whatever is coming to him he will get, and therefore he doesn't have to go and take from others what is not coming to him. He would need to be somewhat humble, because life has many challenges, all kinds of situations that really challenge us. And there are many struggles and many obstacles. And that is where you see the individual, whether he shines or not. That's where you see his midot. That is where you get to know an individual. You cannot get to know someone just from one encounter, from one date, from one sitting with him. You actually have to see him or her in a variety of situations where you can get some sort of idea of this individual, who they are, how strong are they, or how weak they are, what are their strengths and their weaknesses. So obviously, in order for ayin tovah to be very strong in an individual, we would have had to see other midot, other beautiful midot in this individual as well. Otherwise, this is such a strong midah, to have an ayin tovah, a positive eye, that it's not something so easily learnt or adapted. You actually have to have worked on other midot to come to this. Because it's possible to occasionally look at someone in a nice way, treat him fairly, and so forth. But to have this midah, we're talking about having it at all times, displaying it under different kinds of circumstances. That is the true midah of an individual. It's not that he once in a while does something good or something nice, because it's a mitzvah. Perhaps he feels it's an obligation. He feels uncomfortable, right? He needs to prove himself. A true midah means something that belongs to an individual. He has acquired it, it's his, he can use it even during difficult times. And true chesed, true kindness, is seen especially during difficult times. When people don't have the money, they still lend a little bit they have. They still give tzedakah even though they don't have as much. Imagine, that's not very common. People who don't have a lot don't want to share. They're thinking of themselves, and this is natural. This is very, very natural. This is one's instinct, telling him, protect yourself. And you should protect yourself. But one who is nevertheless very, very strong in Hesed, he cannot think of not sharing what he has with others. Sharing his money, sharing his time, doing whatever he can to help another individual. An individual who has an Ayin Tovah is therefore an individual who is benevolent, he's kind-hearted, he has a kind nature. He wishes to let and help others live, and he has joy in finding or making the world a happier place. This is a brief definition of this midah. The opposite, however, of this midah, which I want to spend a few minutes so that you can perhaps get a clearer picture of who this individual is, because unfortunately they exist, they're out there. Individuals who have an evil eye. Now don't get confused here, we're not talking about an ayin ra'ah, when somebody gives you the evil eye. That's something else, even though it's very possible that somebody who has an evil eye, in other words, in nature, can actually also give you an evil eye. Very possible, it usually is associated, but they're two separate things. One is more mystical in nature, one does damage and hurts someone in a physical and in a spiritual way, and it was in an indirect way, because they're not actually touching you. And one is much more an attitude, a way of looking at things or at people. An evil eye that we're talking about is an individual who begrudges. What that means is that in general he would gladly deprive others of their good fortune. Whereas the person who has a good eye looks out for the welfare of others, how he could help. He's happy for them, and he's really, really happy. He enjoys the fact that somebody else is successful. He enjoys the fact that somebody just got married. Right? This is an Ayin Tovah. The opposite, the one who has an evil eye, is very unhappy. He would have rather not seen that individual happy. And if he had the chance, depending on how evil he is, he would actually do something to take away the good fortune of that individual. I think the best way to understand this particular evil behavior or evil attitude is with a good example. An example which is brought down in the Halakha, in the Gemara, and you could see it in real life too. The example that the rabbis use is called Ani HaMe'apech B'Harara. Ani HaMe'apech B'Harara means an individual who's trying to acquire something that is in the street. He's about to pick up a $10 bill, okay? He sees it first. He's about to grab it and somebody sneaks underneath him and takes it away from him. That other individual saw him approaching, saw him about to grab it, but he rushes to it and takes it from him. Is that right? No. It's not fair, it's not nice. You see this individual about to take something, it's his. First comes, first serves, right? It's his. What are you coming and rushing and taking that which is his? A person who has an evil eye does not like to share. He's not happy, as we said before, when somebody else is fortunate. Therefore, he tries to do whatever he can to take that away from him. In real life, this is the story, or this is the type of experience that may happen. And I know of one that happened. That's why I will share it with you. Somebody was about to buy a piece of real estate. A building, several apartment units. He thought it was a good deal. But he wasn't sure if that's where he should spend his money. Perhaps real estate values are going to go down. He's not sure. Is this a good buy? So he went to consult with somebody who he knows that has more experience in real estate. He's an investor himself. He has other properties. And he tells you, that this property is for sale. Yeah, I don't think it was in the open market. I don't recall. What do you say? This is what they're asking for. So he tells him, it's not such a good deal. Forget it. Go invest in something else. So he said, okay. The next day he hears that this guy put an offer on the building and took it away from him. So what do you say to that? Did you understand what had just happened? He went and sought his advice as a friend, right? What do you say? So first of all, he told him a lie, so he's also a liar, right? And then he went behind his back and he took away the building that he was looking to get it for himself. And this man is a rich man. He has many properties, many more than this individual who barely has any. I mean, not that he's a poor man. Why take it away from him? I mean, it's so blatant. And then when people confronted the gentleman, it was in that market, anybody could buy it. He gave some sort of silly excuse. But it was so obvious. Because you told him clearly that it wasn't a good deal. Why are you buying it for yourself? And why are you going behind his back? It's a suit, it's not right. Even though halachically the guy did not put down money, because once you put down money, then of course somebody else cannot take it. You made a deposit, that you made a commitment. But still, this is outright stealing. It's like stealing. It's deceit, it's lying, it's everything. But more than that, it's an ayn ra'ah. Look at this individual who's so miserly, who doesn't want to share it. He's not happy if this individual were to make a good deal. Let the guy make a profit. Let the guy make a good investment. You have to make all the good investments in the world. Nobody else can. He would have been very unhappy if somebody else made some money. This midah unfortunately exists. There are people out there that have an ayn ra'ah. They can't stand it when other people are happy, other people are successful. All the people are doing well. It's not that they're jealous, because they're doing well themselves perhaps. It's worse than jealousy if they don't want others to be happy. That is why Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai in Pirkei Avot gathered his students one day and he says, I want to ask each one of you. Each one of you has a different personality. Each one of you has some strength. And I'd like to see what you would suggest. What would you advise people to work on themselves? Which midah, what characteristics should one acquire, should one work hard on, that would really pay off in many ways? He would be happier, more content in life in general, better marriage, better relationship with people. Which midah would you say from your experience is the one that he should spend the most time, the most effort? After all, we can't do everything. If there's one that you would choose, one that perhaps would act as a springboard towards other midot, which one would you choose? I'm not going to mention all the 5. He had 5 students. I'm only going to mention 2. The 2 are very similar in character and in trait and in name. One is Rabbi Eliezer, the first one. Rabbi Eliezer says, you know what a derech tovah, a good way that a man should pursue in this life, would give him a better life in many respects. It's an ayn tovah. It's a good eye. And Rabbi Elazar, which is the last student, says a lev tov, a good heart. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, in hearing what each one has to say, says, I like and I prefer the words or the advice of Rabbi Elazar, shebetoch dvaro divrechem. In his advice, all your other advice and suggestions are included. If you have a good heart, you will come to all the other good midot. Because the foundation of everything, of all the good character, is having a good heart. Even though a good heart is a very important midah, I've chosen to speak more about Rabbi Eliezer's suggestion, a good eye. Why? What's the difference? If Rabbi Yochanan is saying that a good heart is the best, is the most important one, then why are we choosing Rabbi Eliezer's advice? But remember how we started. We began with the school of thought of Abraham Avinu. Abraham Avinu this is one of the things he taught in his school, is to have an ayn tovah. Why didn't he teach lev tov? Simple reason is because lev tov is a lot more difficult. Lev tov is already something that has more to do with pure chesed. Chesed, kindness. Whereas an ayn tovah is something more unique that touches on how one sees life, how one sees the world. A lev tov requires certain actions, certain deeds. An ayin tovah does not necessarily always require deeds. It's how a person looks at life, how he views it, other people. So it's a little bit different. So this midah of Rabbi Eliezer, the ayin tovah, is also a very important midah. Lev tov, a good heart, is very important, but it's somewhat different. We're speaking about ayin tovah. So therefore, Rabbi Eliezer recommends that this is something that we should put a tremendous amount of effort on. Because if we do so, it will help us in many, many other areas as well. As I said in the very beginning, one who possesses an ayin tovah, it will enable him to look at life in a positive way. Positive thinking, positive way of looking at everything that happens in life. And that's a very important midah. The Baal Shem Tov, I think it's the Baal Shem Tov, used to say as follows: a man is where his thoughts are. Whatever a man thinks about most of the time, wherever his thoughts are, wherever his imagination is, wherever he spends a lot of time thinking about, that's where he really is. That's what his level is all about. Because whatever a man is, whatever he truly is, that's what he thinks about. If he's a cheater and a liar, so he's thinking about how to cheat and how to lie. He's thinking of another plot, how to circumvent a certain situation, because that's his essence. That's where he spends his time. So his thoughts are there, right? Person who's kind-hearted, who has a good nature, then he's not thinking of these kind of things. He's thinking of ways to help people, picks up the phone, goes over, visits the sick. That's where his thoughts are, and that's what is seen in the Metziut, in reality. That is how he spends his time. So a man is where his thoughts are. The thoughts are very, very important. So even though the thoughts of one are important, and that will somewhat dictate how one sees things, depending what he's thinking about, let's not forget that in Judaism, thoughts by themselves, as important as they may be, are not enough. It is not only important to think in a certain way, but it's also important to feel a certain way and to act in a certain way. So we have thoughts, we have feelings, and we have actions. And actions are the ones that count the most, because it's all about actions, it's all about deeds. A lot of people have told me they have a good heart, a real, genuine Jewish heart. Yeah, but they don't do anything. They don't observe mitzvot. So what good is that heart inside the heart, pumping, right, beating? What good is it if it's a good, kind heart, if it doesn't translate itself into deeds? Right? You have to do things to prove it. So Judaism requires deeds. It's not enough what you believe and what you think. Right? You have to act upon it. Nevertheless, even though the actions are important, the thoughts are extremely important, because the thoughts act as planting a seed. You can plant whatever seed you want in your mind, and from that seed, from that thought, will come out a tremendous big tree. In other words, it all begins with a thought. You don't just spontaneously begin to act. In order for somebody to commit himself to something that requires tremendous responsibility, he has to think it through. Does this make sense to me? Am I convinced? Is this true? Do I really believe in it? Once you're convinced of something, you may be even willing to give your life for it. After all, that's what our forefathers did. They were so convinced, their emunah was so crystal clear and pure, that they had the strength and the courage to give their life for it. Where did that come from? They were simple people. They were not all rabbis. They were simple. Nevertheless, the conviction was there. So it all depends on what the thought, what the mind tells an individual. The Sefer HaChinuch says, however, when it comes to feeling in a certain way, how do you produce the feeling? How do you produce these beautiful feelings that we're talking about? Kind-hearted, being generous. These are feelings too. They're not just thoughts. If there's a genuine feeling, it does not come about by itself. Where does it come from? So the Sefer HaChinuch says, what the mitzvot, all the mitzvot, the commandments have in common, is that she'achrei ha'pe'ulot nimshachot ha'levavot. After the actions, the hearts are influenced. In other words, the hearts are influenced in such a way as a result of the actions we do, the deeds that we perform. For example, when we slaughter an animal, we're so careful not to cause it excess pain. Right? We're so careful in shechita, slaughtering the animal. Even though we can slaughter it, we're taking its life. We're going to eat it. Right? We're going to cut it up. We're going to drain its blood. But we have to do that in a very, very specific way. And not in a painful way. All the mitzvot, if you analyze them, you will see that by performing them, one of the things that they do for us, other than the reward, and other than the whatever else they need to accomplish, they instill in us a certain hargasha, a certain feeling. So our feelings or our motivation is definitely influenced by how we perform and what we do. The deeds, as we do something repeatedly, regularly, on a regular basis, it does something to us. It trains us to become what the Torah wants us to become. The Torah wants us to be refined people, to refine our character. So by giving us many mitzvot that are charitable in nature, kind, sympathetic, empathetic, all these mitzvot that have to do with caring for somebody else, that is the ultimate result, what it's supposed to produce. So even if you're born with an inclination of being stingy, there are people like that who have that inclination. But by training one to do the mitzvot, hopefully, if he does it, it will enable him to have an easier time to be a giver, not a taker. Some people are just into taking. They don't want to give. So by way of the mitzvot, the Torah will train him to become more of a giver, to be understanding of others, that this is not only about for you, life is also about others. So the Torah is training our minds and imbuing in our heart certain feelings and certain ideas that the Torah wants us to have. And once we have it, we look at life differently, we live differently, we conduct ourselves differently, whether it's in business, whether it's marriage, whether it's anything, as a result of performing certain mitzvot. Now, even if we don't always understand the full extent of what this mitzvah is all about. What's the logic of sending off the mother bird? It's a hook. It's a decree. There's no logic to it. Sending off the mother bird. You know, the mitzvah of taking the chicks or the eggs, sending off the mother bird. You see a pigeon somewhere in the street, you send her off. What's this? Shabbat is easy. It's a day of rest. I wish every day was a day of rest, right? Why not? Half a day, right? Half a day of rest. No. So Baruch Hashem, we have one day a week, Shabbat. So we can understand that, we can relate to that. It's to rest, it's to spend time with the family, to spend time with God. It makes some sense. Kabed et avicha betimecha, honoring your parents makes some sense. There's a lot of mitzvot that are logical, that are common sense, but then there are those that we don't understand. What about the sacrifices? During the time we had a temple, to bring a sacrifice, what did the poor animal do? That we sacrifice it on the altar of the Mizbeach. But when we learn Torah, especially when we learn the deeper levels of Torah, like the Kabbalah, then we come to understand a little bit more of what this does to us, what this does to the world. There are things that are done in this world that we are not aware of, because we see with our physical eyes. But there's a whole spiritual layer, a whole spiritual realm where things occur which we do not see. We cannot observe everything. But it's through our actions, the Kabbalah says, that we're able to bring about all kinds of things in this world on a spiritual level. And as a result of doing them, they also do something for us. So in this way, this is the only way where an individual who by nature is not kind-hearted, who does not have a good eye or a positive way of thinking, who tends to be more depressed and sad and envious or lazy and stingy, all the midot that we've spoken about, or angry, right? Or just very much loves to eat. All these individuals, everyone with his weakness, by learning about these characteristics, by learning the Torah, by observing the mitzvot, he can actually gain a lot. And if he does succeed in controlling himself, in disciplining himself, it's a tremendous achievement. Self-control, self-discipline is something admirable, because you're doing it by yourself. You're doing it out of your own free will. This is not something that is innate to your nature. It is not even part of your mazal. Your mazal will dictate how much money you will make, how long you will live. Your mazal will not dictate whether you will control yourself, control your anger, and so forth. That is your own choice. So people are going to be judged by their choices they've made, not choices of where they invested their money. That's all mazal. Choices of whether they wanted to have a good marriage or not, choices of whether they were honest in their business dealings, choice of whether they conducted themselves properly with people. That is where man stands out. That is where he succeeds or he fails. The only area in life where it matters is the area of Yirat Shamayim. Was he a God-fearing, a good person or not? And that's up to him. So midot, which is what we're learning in the past few months, has a lot to do with this. Do you work on yourself? Do you try to correct it? Do you try to have another outlook, a better, positive outlook, or not? Or do you stay the way you are? And in order to achieve or to acquire a particular midah, it's going to require work. An individual who is strong in this area, in the area of a good eye, will definitely display much more optimism, enthusiasm. He will be more acceptable of change. This individual will most likely be more friendly than your average, self-giving of himself, hardworking, grateful, cheerful, and he has what it takes to encourage others as well. Look at this midah, look at the byproducts as I call them, of this one midah called Ayin Tovah. He's a much happier person, he's a much more cheerful person, he's more optimistic, he's friendly, he's grateful, he's hardworking. So many good midot, so many good characteristics as a result of this one called Ayin Tovah, a good eye. However, one of my favorite byproducts, which I very much like to speak about, that comes out as a result of being strong in the area of Ayin Tovah is called Ladun Lechav Zechut. Ladun Lechav Zechut means to give people the benefit of the doubt, to judge people favorably. This midah of Ayin Tovah, when a person sees things in a favorable way, in a good way, in a positive way, it helps him understand people. It helps him give people the benefit of the doubt. I want to quote to you what is brought down in Sefer Orchot Tzadikim. In speaking about humbleness, he brings down a mashal, I don't know if it's a true story or not, I think it is, of an individual who always gave people the benefit of the doubt. Now, the question that was asked of him was, how did you succeed in life to get along with everyone? How did you succeed in life that everybody always has something good to say about you, that you were so well accepted? What is it that you did? He says, well, it's very simple. And I'm going to quote to you more or less what he says. He says, everyone that I came in touch with in my life, I always saw something about him that was better than me. For example, if he was more knowledgeable than myself, then I said he must be more God-fearing than me, because he knows more. And if he was not as smart and not as knowledgeable as I was, then I figured that he probably does not commit as many sins as I do. And those that he did, he does them unintentionally, and I do them intentionally, because he's not as knowledgeable. So whatever he did wrong, mistakes that he made, it's not his fault. He doesn't know. If I'm older than him, then I figured that his sins are fewer than mine. And if he was older than me, I figured that his merits, his zechuyot, are greater than mine. If he was a wealthy man that I met, wealthier than myself, I figured he must have done a lot more charity than me. And if he was poorer than me, I figured that he must be a lot humbler than me, and therefore a lot better than myself. This is the way he looked at everyone. He was always able to see in what way that other individual was better than him. And that is why he got along with everyone. Everybody always had something good to say about him. And he was a very successful individual. I found something interesting in the name of Abraham Lincoln. You know, Abraham Lincoln was not only the President of the United States, number 16, he was also a very interesting individual. There's a lot of interesting things that he has said, remarks. He obviously had a very, I think, good nature in many, many ways. And this is one of the things he says. I don't like that man. I must therefore get to know him better. I want you to think about this because you may not catch it at the first moment. I don't like that man. I must get to know him better. Do you all understand what he's trying to say here? Basically, once I get to know him better, maybe, or for sure, I will definitely see something good in him. And I will not have a reason not to like him. When we don't like someone, perhaps it's time to get to know him better. I think this is very, very special. In life, in general, anybody that has an Ain Tovah looks at things a lot more positive. And as a result of positive thinking, it gives him much more strength, much more energy, and much more initiative. Therefore, psychologists have said that this is a very important key that every human being has. This is the key that we have, the key to how we look at life. It really depends on us. The Torah says it in different words. You have it atov, et hara, the good and the bad, uvacharta v'chayim. You should choose life. The Torah advises us that yes, we always have choices. And that choice is ours. And what kind of a choice is it? Whether we choose light or darkness, whether we choose the good or the bad. We don't have too many other choices, but certain choices are ours. And that is the attitude that we have, how we look at life, how we accept things that happen to us, whether it's an insult, whether it's an obstacle, whether it's some challenge, how we relate to it, how do we deal with it? That's up to us. Or as one professional explained it in the following way. You can close the windows and darken your room, or you can open the windows and let in the light. Well, your mind is a room. So, do you darken it, or do you let the light in? You understand? That's pretty much the idea that I'm talking about over here when I say we have a key. And that key will determine how we feel, our attitude towards situations. And there are some very difficult situations in life when we see things are not going the way we would like them to go. Things are not working out the way we thought they would. We've planned all kinds of plans, and those plans have been frustrated. They didn't work out. We get frustrated. We feel terrible. We maybe even become pessimistic about the future. No, Chaz v'shalom. Don't let that happen. There's no reason for it. There is, of course, a tremendous midah called midat habitachon that we've spoken about in the past that can help us overcome that, trusting in Hashem. But this is not just trusting. This is much more than that. An Ain Tovah looks at things in a positive way. It's not I rely and I trust and I know that this is for my good. An Ain Tovah takes it one step further. He sees the good in this. He tries to find the good in this. He sees things in a different light. He looks at things in a positive way. It's a much grander midah. It says a lot about the person who has this midah. As I said in the beginning, it has to come from a background of other midot that need to be present there in order for him to truly, genuinely feel the way he does. I want to share with you a story, which I may have in the past, I don't remember, but it pays to repeat it, of an individual who had, I'd like to call it, two good eyes. Okay? Remember what I said? Two good eyes, not one. She had a very interesting custom, a hergel. She wore an apron when she went out to the streets. This happened in Israel. I think it was Yerushalayim. She wore an apron every time she went out to the street. In this apron there were two pockets. In one pocket of the apron she put any piece of paper that she found in the street that had letters of Kedusha, words of Torah, Sidur, that people by mistake throw away. She put it in one pocket in order to later on give it to the Genizah. They take it and they bury it. Why should it be in the street? So she picked it up and put it in one pocket. She showed concern about these items of Kedusha. In the other pocket of her apron, she put anything that she felt was dangerous. A broken piece of glass, a piece of metal, or a sharp stone, anything that would get in the way that, God forbid, somebody can get hurt, she picked that up and put it in her pocket. This thing went on for many, many years. This was her custom. Almost on a daily basis, she would go out and fetch these things. This woman passed away, and she came in a dream to one of the rabbis in the neighborhood, and she said that when I came up there, they took this apron and they weighed it in gold. And do you know which one of the two pockets was more valuable? The pocket where I inserted all those things that were potentially dangerous to people. That pocket somehow was much more important upstairs. The other two were important, but that one weighed the most. And of course, she was rewarded immensely for this. Now, why did I mention this story? It's very nice, of course, that we see from this and from many other stories as this, that everything counts, every good act is recorded, and obviously these were very good acts. But think about it. Not everybody does what she did. Is it because they didn't think of it? No. We from time to time see something on the floor. We see something that may perhaps should not be on the floor because it's holy or because it's dangerous. Do we bother to pick it up? Does it enter our mind? Does it cross our mind? Are we bothered by it as much? Do we want to really take care of this? Not necessarily either because we don't have the time, we're lazy, or it doesn't mean as much to us. It takes an ayin tovah. In this case, I said two eyes, one for those things and one for those things. It takes a tremendous amount of caring to be able to go out of one's way and take the trouble to do this and collect it and dispose of it or whatever. That's a good eye. A good eye because she cares, because she's kind. She wants to help. So nobody's paying her for this. Nobody's paying her for this. Of course, Bashamayim, they paid her. Definitely, she's rewarded for it. Even though she was a simple woman, she had this. These were two big mitzvot, two good eyes. Perhaps we can use this example in a different way. Rabbis tell us who is strong. Who is a strong man? Ezo gibora koveshet yitzro, one who is able to conquer his evil inclination, he's able to control himself. Kol hakavod lo, we give him all our respects. It shows tremendous strength. Then the rabbis add, you know who's gibor sheba giborim? Who's the strongest man of all? Stronger than the one who's able to control himself. I mean, do you have somebody more than that? Remember, we're not talking about somebody that picks up weights, 500 pounds. Everybody thinks, oh, what a great feat. So he did some practice, he has muscles, and he ate a lot. That's how he did it. It's not a big deal. A big deal is when one controls himself. That is a big deal. But there's one who's even more powerful than this individual who controls himself. And who is that? Eizu gibor sheba giborim, ze she'oseh mison'o havero. One who takes somebody he does not like, it's his enemy. They don't get along, and somehow he transformed him into a friend. It takes a lot of guts to do that because you don't like someone. You'd rather not see him. You don't want to speak to him. You don't want to have anything to do with him. You say, "Well, I'm not going to allow that to control me. I'm not going to allow something like this in my life. I'm going to actually do something to change that individual's mind. I'm going to do something. We may not be buddies, but I'm going to somehow change the way he feels towards me and the way I feel towards him. Something. I will do something. I'm going to invite him for dinner, take him out, buy him a gift, and he, of course, will be shocked, And as a result of that, the ice will be broken, it will be melted, right? The partitions will come down, and they will be able to have a better relationship. You know how much it takes to do that? It's not easy. But it's possible. I think it is told by Aharon. Aharon HaKohen, the brother of Moshe, he was known for making peace amongst people. Now, how did he achieve this? How did he make peace amongst people? Imagine bitter enemies. How do you make peace? He went to, let's say we're dealing with two individuals, Reuven and Shimon. He went over to Shimon. Shimon, Reuven feels so terrible that he hurt your feelings, that he did what he did. He's so sorry. Reuven never told him to say that. He on his own said that. Reuven feels terrible. He's so upset at himself that he hurt your feelings, that he did what he did. And Shimon says, really? He says, yes, you should see him. He feels so bad, he's in pain, he's distressed. Oh, wow. He says, I also, feel bad, I wish it didn't happen. He goes back to Reuven and he tells Reuven, Shimon feels terrible. He's so upset at himself. He can't believe it that it happened, And even though those were not the true feelings of the two, when those two met at the street, they hugged each other. Aaron caused people who had so much animosity towards each other to somehow come together. He was able to find whatever it was that allowed people to save face and to regret what they did and to change their mind. That's all that happened here. They changed their mind. How do you change someone's mind? Right? You get him to realize that what he did was wrong. And in this case, since it was a fight with someone else, you get him to think that the other one is remorseful. It happened with him. In other words, he's the one that started. He's the one that feels bad. And that way, his ego wasn't hurt, and he, of course, felt sorry too. And that is how they made peace. This is the way it works with husband and wife. This is the way it works with friends who've had issues between themselves. Sometimes it's very difficult for the two of them or for one of them to actually break the ice. But if you do it, if you really are remorseful, if you really feel bad, you say, I'm sorry, and you do it with all your heart, and you're willing to prove it and to make a change, then there's no reason in the world that things cannot turn around. I believe, honestly, sincerely believe, that 99% of divorces can be stopped if people would really follow this path of reconciliation. If they really got themselves to face, we made mistakes, we're both wrong, we both made mistakes, but we can fix it. There are some situations that are very, very bad because they hurt each other so bad that how do you bring back the feelings? They're lost completely. But if they're not lost completely, if the two feel a little bit towards each other, everything is possible. Just be sincere, be truthful. Look at life in a different way. Not that you were hurt. Perhaps how terrible it is that I actually hurt that other individual. So you're not looking anymore at yourself. Now that you're switching the focus to the victim, to the other person. Then, of course, if that's the way you feel towards the other person, then maybe it will be easier for you to make amends. So I gave you this example of Eizu Gibor Sheba Giborim Haosem Misono Chavero, whoever makes from his enemy a friend. The same is, you can use this idea with transforming an Ain Ra'ah to an Ain Tova. If a person was begrudging, not being happy, or as we say in Hebrew, Uloya mefargen lo, it was difficult for him lefargen, to feel happy for someone else, you can transform that into an Ain Tova, but it takes a lot of work. It is possible, but it's like converting or transforming an enemy to a friend. You have to look at things differently. That's what it requires. It requires a different way of thinking. As I always do, I leave towards the end some tips. What are some good tips that can help us develop a good eye, a kind heart, a caring heart towards other people? One that I find from experience that could be very, very helpful is you're going in the street, you're driving, and you have the right of way. You know how sometimes people try to come out of the parking lot? They try to get in? You can say to yourself, well, let him wait, right? You're in a hurry anyway. It's Erev Shabbat. But all you do is, as we say in Hebrew, gesta tova, right? A good, I don't know what the word for it would be in English, a good...
gesture.
Gesture, I guess gesture, yes. Go ahead, faddal, as we say in Arabic, go ahead, right? You go. Most of them, 99% of them, will appreciate it. They will wave to you and say thank you. Because they will be stuck there. If it's a rush hour, these people could not always get in. Unless you're an Israeli driver, then you push yourself in, somehow you always get in. But we're not like that. Yeah. Some people they push themselves, and if you don't want to crash, of course, then you just let them go. Okay, you go, right? Nobody likes those type of people, right? What does it take to give him the go-ahead? Or as we say in English, to yield. What does it take? You lost 20 seconds of your time. That's all it was. Now, sometimes it's hard because the people in the back are going to yell at you and honk their horn at you, especially when there's a lot of traffic. What are you letting him? Why not? What, is he worth less than you? You have more rights than him? He also wants to join the traffic and get home too. Think about it. The guy's not thinking like that in the back if he's upset at this. Or if he doesn't do it. He's not thinking, let the guy wait. After all, I'm here. I've been struggling. I'm an hour stuck in traffic. Let him wait too. No. Well, maybe he's waiting here a long time too. What does it cost you? So he got ahead of you a little bit. What's the big deal? That's a very good idea, I believe. And the reason why it's good is not only for ourselves. Do you know what this will do to the whole community of drivers if everybody thinks like that? Just think of the difference between driving here and driving in New York. Do you know what the difference is? In New York, you hear the horn a lot more. People are honking a lot more. Here, people don't honk as much. People have gotten used to it that you just don't honk. You know, you be a gentleman, just live with it, go along with it. Takes you another half an hour to get home. It's going to take you another half an hour. People are much more patient here than they are in New York. New York, they're much more aggressive. They're always in a hurry, and because of that, the attitude is different. If more and more people behave like that, then it causes a change in the whole environment. In other words, in the whole city. Right? This is the way things begin. But if everybody's going to do it the wrong way, then of course it's going to have the opposite result. This is one idea. The next one is also, I believe, a very good idea, and it shows something about an individual. Let's say you made up with a worker that he should do some work for you. A worker, plumber, right? Fix something. And you made up $35 an hour, or you made up a certain dollar amount for the whole job. Right? Comes the time to pay him, and you're supposed to give him, let's say, $65. Give him $70. Do you know how good the person will feel about himself? You give him a tip. And you might say, why? Well, let me ask you a question. Don't you give a tip when you go to eat in a restaurant anyway? Oh, that's because it's customary, because they tell you, it's 15%. What's the difference? This guy worked harder than the waiter. Think about it for a moment. And isn't $5 worth it if he's going to be happy? You're going to make him happy. Do you know that because of that, he will gladly come next time you call him too? Did you think about that? People don't think about it. No. There are people just the opposite. $65. Would you take 60? They try to bring him down. Why bring him down? Let the guy make a profit. Let the guy make some money. He has bills to pay too. You think you only have the gas bill and the utility bills and he doesn't have them? Think about it. But we don't always think about the big picture. So we try to get every dollar out. Not every one of us, but some people like to squeeze everyone and not allow them to make a profit. And here I'm talking about the exact opposite. Not only do we give him what he deserves, we actually give him a tip. We actually give him a little bit more. That shows a good eye. You're in a bus. You can give somebody your seat, especially if they're older. Not everybody does so. If you give them your seat, you let them go before you. Let's say you're in a supermarket and you have 10 items and they only have 2 items. And this happens, by the way, all the time in the supermarket. Some of them actually ask, can I go before you? I only have 2 items, I'm really in a hurry. I've seen people say, no way. What's the big deal? Let him go. Maybe he's really in a hurry. Do you know? No, he's not in a hurry. He just wants to go first. How do you know? Why not? What's going to happen if you let him go before you? It's only 2 items. If he has 10 items just as much as you, then I can understand, And even then, if you would be in a hurry, perhaps you should let him go. If he's really in a hurry, he says so. Most people don't lie. If they're in a hurry, they're in a hurry. These are all good gestures. And here's another idea that is similar to the story of the woman with the 2 pockets. You see something thrown in the street, on your sidewalk. Well, most people don't want a dirty sidewalk. Do they bother to pick up the garbage? Not necessarily. If there's a piece of paper, they just leave it alone. Now, some people are very clean. and they'll pick it up. Once in a while to pick up something which is not a big deal, it's not dirty. It's just to pick it up and put it on the sidewalk or put it in a safe place in a garbage can is a good thing. It shows that a person has a good eye. Good eye, in other words, a positive way of looking at things, that he wants to be helpful. He's not just thinking of himself, of his comfort. Another example, another idea that we can easily implement. One of the ideas the rabbis remind us that is important for us to get used to is lekabel et kol adam besever panim yafot, to greet people with a happy countenance. You see somebody, good morning, how are you doing? Doesn't that happen to you in the street with non-Jews sometimes? They tell it to you. They say to you, hi, how are you doing? You never met him, you never saw him, you never spoke to him, but that's because he's a gentleman. That's very nice. So we should be first to greet people. Somebody comes to ask you for charity, don't just give him the money. Greet him nicely. Your smile, your few words of encouragement will mean a lot more to him than the few dollars that you will give him. It will make him feel a lot better. So be nice when you greet people. Smile to them. When it comes to marriage, there's also 3 ideas that can be very, very helpful in developing or strengthening a positive or a good eye. And that is, be careful to say yes more often than you say no. In marriages, there are times we say no. And there will be some times we say yes. Just make sure you say yes more often than you say no. This will show that you have a good, positive eye. If you're saying no all the time, it doesn't mean too good. So be careful that you say yes more than you say no. Listening well is a very good characteristic. It shows that you care, you listen. You're not impatient, you're willing to listen to what the other person has to say, their feelings and so forth. It also shows a good midah of being generous, of being kind-hearted. And one more that is also very helpful. Don't wait to be asked to do certain things. Sometimes do it on your own. If you volunteer and do something that would be asked of you later on to do it, it shows too that you care, that you look at things in a positive way. After all, you're both equal. You both do for each other. A whole different way of looking at marriage, and not just dealing or handling it in a selfish way. I highly encourage people who are serious about working on their midot, and especially Ayin Tovah, to read stories about great people, inspirational stories that will motivate us to hopefully want to emulate them, people who stand out. Stories like this woman. It's inspiring. It's beautiful. There are many stories like that. By reading the stories, that is how we learn. That is how we get ideas. Otherwise, where are we going to learn this from? You don't have lectures every day, everywhere about all these midot. You have to learn it from a book. You have to read about it and become impressed and want to do it too. So that is one idea, one important idea that one should practice. Another one which I find that has helped me a lot in many ways is reflecting on the beauty of creation. Whether it's seeing a video about the majestic of creation, the majesty of God, the beautiful harmony, the vast animal kingdom, just everything, how beautiful, the colors, the galaxies, just everything. In the past they didn't have all that we have today, the ability to see things all over the world. There's so many beautiful things all over the world. And the rabbis encourage us to see and to even make a blessing upon seeing certain things. That this is so beautiful, Hashem, that you've made such a beautiful world. When you see the beauty in creation, the majesty, the harmony, you become impressed, you become touched by it. You also are able to see the midot of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, how Hashem interacts with this world, how He cares, how He takes care of all the animals, how He manages His world. And hopefully you learn from this. So these are ways that give us tremendous hope, encouragement, and allows us to see things in a much more positive and optimistic way. I'd like to end with a very important point that we've said in the past, a very true point, that what goes around is sure to come around. Everybody heard that? What goes around is sure to come around. In other words, how you act and how you behave and do to others, one of these days it's going to come back. Hopefully if it's something good, it's going to come back as something good. And I want to share with you a story that happened in Bnei Brak about 25 years ago or so. This story, I don't remember if I did, but it pays to repeat the story. Incredible story of a woman who was never in Bnei Brak. Even though she lived in Israel, this was the first time that she came to Bnei Brak. Unfortunately, as she was crossing the street, she was run over by a bus. And she was killed. Everybody gathered there to see if they could help. They couldn't help. They were trying to find papers that identify her. Nobody can identify her. Nobody knows who she was. She was not a religious lady. So nobody knew her. She wasn't from there. The police came and they wanted to make an autopsy. But the religious people heard about autopsies. They got involved and they demonstrated. And there was a big commotion. More and more people began to gather. As soon as the police saw what was going to happen, they said, okay, forget about it. Just go ahead and bury her. Because so many people have gathered, and as you know, in Bnei Brak and in other parts of Israel, whenever somebody dies, there's a funeral, they have speakers that go all over the city to announce there is a individual so-and-so that just died. Here, they announced that it was a met mitzvah. Met mitzvah is a special mitzvah when a dead person has nobody to bury him. You see a Jewish man, a woman, dead in the middle of nowhere. It's a big mitzvah for you to take care of him or her. So here, it was a big mitzvah, so you can imagine thousands of people came for a woman that nobody knew who she was. You can imagine the burial that they gave her, the eulogy, the funeral, the whole process. It was incredible. And people were actually puzzled. They know that things don't happen for no reason. What did this woman do to deserve this kind of a funeral? This is a funeral of the biggest righteous man, rabbi. A woman, secular, not from Bnei Brak, nobody knows her, to get this kind of kavod and honor. Somebody finally caught up with a woman who knew this woman from Russia. She was a Russian woman. And during the Holocaust, people, as you know, died from starvation, from all kinds of causes, disease, and many of them were left in the street. She used to pick them up by herself and bury them. Wow. Anybody that she saw that was by himself on the street, dead, didn't have anybody to take care of them, she on her own took them and buried them. There was one case even where they buried a Jew in a non-Jewish cemetery. She found out about it and she went with her bare hands and dug him up and transferred the body to a Jewish cemetery. She did a lot of these kind of deeds during the past when she was in Russia. Once, of course, we heard this, it was crystal clear how come she deserves such a great funeral, such a great honor, because what goes around comes around. This is the kavod that she gave to all those individuals who nobody took care of them. She got the same kavod, if not more, a lot more, when so many Jews came to accompany her to her final resting place. Ayin Tovah is a very special midah, is a beautiful midah. Kabbalistically, however, there's another idea behind it, and that is called Shmirat Einayim, which I'm not going to get into right now, but it's also very important, and that means that it's not enough that we have a positive eye in how we look at things, in how we do things, but it's also important that we protect our eyes from being contaminated by what is seen in the outside world. According to the Kabbalah, when one watches his eyes, when one is careful not to contaminate his physical eyes, Kabbalistically he causes or brings about that Hashem's eyes, even though Hashem doesn't have his eyes, but Kabbalistically is able to look down at us in a positive way. If we treat our eyes properly, we look at things positively, we protect our eyes from contamination, it brings about that Hashem should look down at us in a positive way. That is a very, very special segula, therefore. A good piece of advice for those people who are looking for Hashem's blessing: protect your eyes, watch your eyes from not being contaminated. In this way, Hashem will look down at you positively. People take care of their physical bodies. People do a lot of things for their bodies. They exercise, they go on diets, they do all kinds of things to stay in shape. we're getting close to the end of the series of Midot. We have 4 more Midot to go. Next week there's no lecture. I will not be in town. So after that we have 4 more to go. I want to remind you and remind myself that it's not enough to take care of your physical body. That's important. Take care of your physical body. The Torah says, "Nishmartem me'od lenafshotechem." Watch over your physical body. Eat right, sleep right. Take care of it. This is the vessel that holds your neshama while you're alive. And the way you treat your body also will mean how you feel physically. You feel good, you feel bad, you ate too late, you went to sleep right after you ate dinner. It's not good. So there's no doubt that this is important, but don't forget in the midst of all of that we take care of our physical body. Nourish your soul. You know what that means? Your soul, your neshama needs nourishment too. The neshama, the spirit has to feel good. If the spirit does not feel good, the body will not feel good either. In order for the neshama to feel good, the neshama needs to be happy. The neshama needs to look at things positively. It needs to be content and not envious and not sad, not depressed, not angry. The spirit has to be nourished. The only way to nourish the spirit properly is through classes of Torah. For the men, it means setting aside some time for learning Sifrei Musar, books of Musar, moral Jewish ethics, things that remind us of our duty, of our purpose in life. This is what nourishes our soul. This is what makes us happier too. When we read the Torah, when we read the Chumash, when we read the Midrash, we all of a sudden forget about everything, all the things that disturb us. If we don't learn it, it's chaval. It's to be shakua, to be so immersed in all our troubles, our fears, our worries, for nothing. When this really is meaningless, it's nothing, it's nonsense. But in order to convince ourselves that it's nonsense, that there's other more important things in life, we need to change our focus. We need to look at things in a positive way with a good eye. That can only come about if we learn about it. And we remind ourselves and we review it and repeat it time after time. In this way we will stay in shape, not only physically, but spiritually as well. Thank you.
Very nice.
So next week I won't be here. I'll see you 2 weeks from now. Zat Hashem. Okay? 2 weeks.